Alright folks, we finished with law of sines. The next section that we look at now is law of cosine. And formulas, as it's written here, is used to find a missing side length. And the formula can also be rearranged to find an angle. And we'll go through an example of each, and then we'll do a few more after. So here you got to find the missing length of x. So here's our length. If we try to use the law of sines, we would remember from the law of sines that you need to have a pair. So you'd have to have an angle and side that you know. And here in this diagram, you don't have that situation. You don't have an angle-side pair. For instance, if this were, let's say, 52 degrees, you'd have an angle and a side pair, and you would use the law of sines. Well, you don't have that. So let's just get rid of it. In this case now, what you have is a side length, an angle in between, another side. So you always have what we say side, angle, side. So you'd have this wedge. So it has to be given to you that way. Alright, so to set this up, you don't need to worry about how do I label A, B, C, and cosine A. Don't worry about that. There's a pattern how this is laid out. You always start with the unknown side. So it will be x squared. Then you take the two sides that surround the angle. So you have 86 degrees plus 65 degrees. Subtract these two sides. And then it's cosine of the angle that's between the sides. So if you look at the way this is set up, to find x, you write x squared. You need to have a side, angle, side. So you're going to square the two sides you're given, add them together. Subtract 2 times both these sides, so the numbers haven't changed, still 86 and 65. Then you do cosine of the angle that's there. So this pattern has laid out stays the same for each question. So in this case now you have x squared equals 7,396 plus 4,225 subtract. So the next part, you're going to say 2 times 86 times 65, and that's going to give you 11,180. And cosine of 19 degrees, you need 4 decimal places, 0.9455. So x squared equals, you're going to add these two sides together, and that's going to give you 11,621. Subtract, and it's subtract this answer. You're going to take your 11,180 and multiply to 0.9455. So 10,570.69. And you do your subtraction there. You'll get 10,050. So if it's squared, to get rid of squared, to simplify it down, you take the square root. So x would then equal 32.4. And everything here is given in centimeters, so we say centimeters. Now, a couple cautions as you go through this. You're going to work out everything on the left side of that subtraction sign, and then you work out everything on the right side of the subtraction sign. Where students make mistakes is that we would try and add the 7,000, the 4,000, and subtract this 11,080. They would try to add and subtract these three numbers. You can't do that. You can only add the first two, then subtract the answer here. It has to do with order of operations. So this multiplication has to get done before you can do any subtraction. So then this answer simplifies down on this side. So you should always have your subtraction sign in between. Another caution is that the number here on your left, this 11,621, this number should always be bigger than the number over here. Because if it wasn't, if this number were smaller, your answer would be negative, and you can't take the square root of a negative number. So when you're working this down, this turns out to be a negative, and you try to take the square root of it, you've made a mistake, you've gone wrong. Okay, so we look at this question here, and you got to find a missing angle x. You would always try to see if you could use the law of sines first. Now we don't have an angle side pair. You have a side, no angle. Side, don't know the angle. So you don't have a pair you know. That means you automatically got to use law of cosine. So when you're looking at this here to set it up, now that you've recognized that's a law of cosine question, you then look for this wedge like this. So how you would set it up, you're going to say cosine of x, because that's our missing angle, x, is equal to. Okay, then we're going to start with the two sides that surround our angle. 5 squared plus 7 squared. So it's similar to how we started over here when we want to find the length. You're always starting with the two sides that surround the angle. Here it was 86 and 65, and you're squaring them, adding them. Here it's 5 and 7. Subtract, and here you subtract, well, your third side. So this side is always across from the angle. And you divide by 2 times, well, these two sides. 5 times 7. So you get 25 plus 49, subtract 36. Oh, I should remember to write cosine x. All over 2 times 5 is 10, times 7, 70. And you have 38 over 70. Cosine x is equal to, so 38 divided by 70, and you would have 0 decimal 5429. This step is not new to you. This is where you have to use second function. And give me a moment there. And second function. (57 degrees). So if you just review this question, if you want to find the angle, you square the two sides that surround the angle. So 5 squared plus 7 squared. And you then subtract 6 squared. And let's divide by 2 times those same sides. And you can work out your math, use your second function cosine, and you'll come down with the degree. Unless otherwise told, work your lengths out to 1 decimal. Unless it's stated differently in the question, and your angle should always be whole numbers, so to the nearest number. Okay, there are two questions here that we'll work through. So what I'd like to do at this point is, if the video could be paused, you try this question. I'll pause the video and I'll go through it. Okay, so I'm going to assume now you've attempted the question. First thing we look at is to see if this is a law of sines question. So you would need an angle and a side. So we have an angle, missing side, but you need an angle and side pair. Side, no angle, side, no angle. So then we have to use the law of cosine. So we're going to start by identifying our angle. It's 23 degrees, and then the two sides that surround the angle. That's our first place to start. Now we want to find then the third side. So you would write this x squared is equal to. You take these two sides and you're going to square them, add them together. It doesn't matter which one you write first. The order there is not important. So it's going to be 25.6 squared plus 32.1 squared. Subtract. And it's 2 times these same sides. But it has to be these sides because you don't have any other measurements to use. And then cosine, well, it's only in 23 degrees. So this angle is always in between those sides. And then if you work this out, you would then have 655.36 plus 1030.41. Subtract. Now we're going to do 2 times 25.6 and then times 32.1. You should come back with 1,605. And then cosine of 23, 0.9205. You work out the left side. So everything on the left side of that subtraction sign. We're going to work this right here, right? So don't add and then subtract. Just work out these two numbers. And you get 1685.77. Then subtract your answer from here. That should be 1477.40. X squared is 208.37, and then you have to take the square root. 208.37, and x is 14.4 centimeters. So there's your answer. And then for your last question, find the missing angle. So again, pause the video, give yourselves an opportunity to work through it. Okay, so let's assume now you've given this a try. Oops, don't want the pencil. Here we are. So we want to find the angle. And it is not a law of sines question because we don't have an angle and a side. Okay? So, to find the angle, you would write cosine and whatever the name or letter used for the angle. So here it's x. So cosine x is equal to. Use the two sides that surround the angle. 19.7 squared plus 23.8 squared, and you subtract, well, the last side, 15.6 squared, over 2 times 19.7 times 23.8 cosine x $388.07 plus 566.44 subtract 243.36 all over 937.72 cosine of x, you should have 711.15 and then 937.72. Now at this point it's the same as what we've done when we started trig, this work here. We just have to remember to use the second function feature. So 0.7584, and then x is going to equal cosine -1, and x is equal to 49 degrees. Alright, that's it. Okay, so I'll assign some questions and they'll be posted to the stream in Google Classroom, and you work on them with the remaining time that you have. And I'll take care of any questions when I return.